I should have known the blind date was doomed the moment Marcus checked his Rolex 3 times within the first 10 minutes. My best friend Sarah had set us up, swearing he was successful, charming, and ready to settle down. What she hadn't mentioned was that he was also condescending, self-absorbed, and apparently allergic to basic human decency. "So, Emma," he said, barely looking up from his phone, "Sarah mentioned you work in... what was it? Marketing for some small startup." "Actually, I'm a content strategist for..." Right. He waved his hand dismissively, finally making eye contact. His gaze swept over me with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating a used car. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you. This isn't working for me." I set down my water glass carefully, my cheeks already burning. We were in Lumière, one of the most exclusive French restaurants in downtown Seoul, where reservations took months to secure. The soft piano music and intimate lighting that had seemed romantic 30 minutes ago now felt suffocating. "I appreciate your honesty," I managed to say, reaching for my purse. "Wait." Marcus leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile playing at his lips. "I feel bad about wasting your evening. How about this? I'll pay for your taxi home. Actually, I'll do you one better." He pulled out his wallet and placed several bills on the table. "Consider this compensation for your time. 200,000 won should cover your cab fare and... well, let's call it emotional damages." The air left my lungs. Around us, I could feel other diners' attention shifting toward our table. The money sat there like an accusation, like proof that I was exactly what he saw, someone whose time could be bought and dismissed. "I don't want your money," I said quietly, standing up. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "I want to leave with my dignity intact." "Dignity?" Marcus laughed. "Sweetheart, you showed up to a date at Lumière wearing a dress from a department store. You work at a startup nobody's heard of. Take the money. Trust me, it's more than your evening was worth." I was halfway to the door, vision blurred with angry tears, when I collided with someone's chest. "I'm so sorry," I gasped, stepping back. The man I'd bumped into was tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. But it wasn't his expensive clothes that made me freeze. It was the cold fury in his dark eyes as he looked past me toward Marcus's table. "Are you all right?" His voice was deep, with a gentle concern that felt like a lifeline. "I'm fine," I lied. "I just need to leave." He studied my face for a moment, and something in his expression shifted. "You're crying." "I'm not. But I was. Damn it, I was." Behind me, I heard Marcus call out, "Hey, the money's still on the table if you change your mind." The tall stranger's jaw tightened. He looked down at me again, and this time there was something protective in his gaze. "Let me drive you home." I can't." The words tangled on my tongue. I didn't know this man. For all I knew, he could be just as bad as Marcus. But then he did something unexpected. He handed me his business card. "Kong Ji-hoon," I read aloud. "CEO, Kong Corporation." My eyes widened. Kong Corporation was one of the largest conglomerates in South Korea. Their headquarters dominated the Seoul skyline. "I happened to overhear some of that conversation," Ji-hoon said quietly. "And I'm not a fan of men who treat women like commodities. My driver is outside. I promise you'll be safe. But more importantly, I promise you won't have to walk out of here alone while that bastard watches." Something about his words broke through my shock. He wasn't just offering me a ride. He was offering me a shield, a way to leave with my head held high. "Okay," I whispered. "Thank you." Ji-hoon's hand settled lightly on the small of my back as he guided me through the restaurant. I was acutely aware of every eye following us, but instead of the shame I'd felt moments before, I felt protected. When we passed Marcus's table, Ji-hoon paused. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard at nearby tables. "I couldn't help but notice you left money on the table for this lady." Marcus looked up, his expression faltering when he saw who was speaking. Recognition flickered across his face. Mr. Kong. I didn't realize you were. I think you dropped this. Ji-hoon picked up the bills and held them out. She clearly doesn't want your money. Though I have to say, 200,000 won seems remarkably cheap for what you just tried to buy. I was just humiliating someone. Ji-hoon's tone could have frozen fire. Making a scene in a public restaurant. Or perhaps you were demonstrating why you'll likely eat alone for the foreseeable future. He let the money fall back onto the table. Enjoy your dinner. Outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and I took my first full breath since entering the restaurant. A sleek black Mercedes was waiting at the curb, and a driver in a crisp uniform opened the back door. Thank you, Min-jun, Ji-hoon said, then turned to me. After you. The interior of the car was all leather and luxury, but Ji-hoon maintained a respectful distance as he settled into the seat beside me. Where do you live? I gave him my address in Mapogu, a modest neighborhood nowhere near the wealthy districts where someone like him surely resided. As we pulled into traffic, Ji-hoon handed me a packet of tissues. I'm sorry you had to experience that. It's not your fault, I said, dabbing at my eyes. My mascara was probably ruined. And thank you for, I don't even know what to call it, rescuing me. I'd like to think I was just being a decent human being, he replied. Though I have to admit, I've wanted to put Marcus Shin in his place for years. He's in commercial real estate. I've had the misfortune of dealing with him professionally. He's just as unpleasant in business as he apparently is in his personal life. Despite everything, I found myself smiling slightly. So you didn't just rescue me out of pure altruism? 90% altruism, 10% personal satisfaction, he admitted, and I saw a hint of humor in his eyes. Is that acceptable? More than acceptable. I looked out the window at the Seoul streets flashing by. I can't believe Sarah set me up with him. She kept saying he was ambitious and confident. I guess that's one way to describe arrogance and cruelty. Friends don't always have the best judgment when it comes to matchmaking, Ji-hoon said. My mother's been trying to set me up with appropriate matches for the past 5 years. Last month, she invited a senator's daughter to a family dinner without telling me. The poor woman was just as horrified as I was. I laughed, surprised to find genuine amusement cutting through my earlier distress. What did you do? I apologized profusely, explained that my mother sometimes forgets I'm 32 and capable of making my own decisions, and then spent the rest of the dinner talking to her about her actual passion, marine biology. She's doing fascinating work with coral reef restoration. That sounds much better than anything Marcus would discuss, I said. He spent the first 20 minutes of our date talking about his car collection. Let me guess. He has 3 luxury vehicles but no personality. 4 vehicles. And you're absolutely right about the personality. We fell into a comfortable silence, and I found myself studying Ji-hoon's profile in the dim light of the car. He was handsome in that polished corporate way, sharp jawline, expressive eyes, hair styled perfectly. But there was something else, something in the way he defended me, that suggested depth beneath the executive exterior. Can I ask you something? I said suddenly. Of course. Why did you really help me? I mean, I'm grateful, but you don't know me. For all you knew, I could have deserved what Marcus said. Ji-hoon turned to look at me directly, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. No one deserves to be treated like that. But if you want the complete truth. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. 5 years ago, I watched someone I cared about go through something similar. A man she was dating humiliated her publicly, and I wasn't there to help. I've regretted that ever since. What happened to her? She's fine now. Happily married to someone who actually deserves her. A shadow crossed his face. But I learned something important that day. When you see someone being torn down, you step in. Always. The car slowed as we approached my neighborhood, and I felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. The last 40 minutes had been the best part of my entire evening, which was saying something considering it started with a humiliating disaster. "This is me," I said as we pulled up to my apartment building. It was a modest mid-rise, well-maintained but clearly not luxurious. I felt suddenly self-conscious, wondering what Ji-hoon thought of it. But he just nodded. "Would you like me to walk you to your door?" "That's not necessary. You've already done so much." "Emma," he said, and hearing my name in his voice sent an unexpected warmth through me. "Humor me. I'd like to make sure you get inside safely." We rode the elevator to the 4th floor in silence. At my door, I fumbled with my keys, hyper-aware of his presence beside me. "Thank you again," I said, turning to face him. "I don't know how to properly express how much tonight meant to me. You turned the worst date of my life into, well, something much better." Ji-hoon smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I'm glad I could help. Though I have to say, if that was the worst date of your life, I'd be curious to hear about the second worst." "Oh, that's easy. The guy who brought his mother along and had her interview me about my childbearing plans." His eyes widened. "You're joking." "I wish I were. Korean dating culture is unique. As someone who's had his mother screen potential matches based on their family lineage and blood type, I completely understand." He pulled out another business card and a pen, writing something on the back. "This is my personal number. If you ever need anything, or if you just want to exchange terrible dating stories, please don't hesitate to call." I took the card, my fingers brushing his. "Why would someone like you give me your personal number?" "Because someone like you, smart, dignified even in the face of humiliation, with a sense of humor about truly terrible dates, is exactly the kind of person I'd like to know better." He stepped back. "Good night, Emma. I hope tomorrow is better than today." I watched him walk back to the elevator, unable to quite believe what had just happened. As I entered my apartment, I looked down at the card in my hand. On the back he'd written, "For terrible dating stories, good conversation, or anything in between, JH." I collapsed onto my couch, my phone immediately buzzing with a text from Sarah. "Sarah, how did it go with Marcus? He's gorgeous, right?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Let's just say the night ended much better than it started. I'll call you tomorrow." I couldn't tell her yet. Couldn't explain how the worst blind date of my life had somehow led to meeting Kang Ji-hoon, or how his simple act of kindness had made me feel more valued than any of the men I'd actually dated. The next morning, I woke to find the events of the previous night hadn't been a dream. Ji-hoon's business card sat on my nightstand, proof that something extraordinary had happened. At work, I tried to focus on the campaign strategy one was developing for our startup's latest product launch, but my mind kept drifting back to the restaurant, to Ji-hoon's protective hand on my back, to the way he'd so effortlessly put Marcus in his place. "Earth to Emma." My colleague, Jihyo, waved her hand in front of my face. "You've been staring at that screen for 20 minutes without typing anything. What's going on?" "Nothing. Just had an interesting night." "Interesting good or interesting bad?" "Both." I laughed at her confused expression. "It's complicated." "Well, uncomplicated over lunch. You're buying and I want details." But lunch was interrupted by an unexpected delivery. A massive bouquet of white roses arrived at our small office, causing every head to turn. "Emma Park?" the delivery person asked. "That's me," I said nervously, signing for the flowers. The card read, "I hope your day is as lovely as you are. May it erase the memory of yesterday's unpleasantness. JH." Jihyo's eyes went wide. "JH. Do you have a secret boyfriend?" "No, it's just someone I met yesterday. Someone who sends you 50 white roses to your workplace." She grabbed the card before I could stop her, her jaw dropping. "Emma, this is on Kong Corporation letterhead." "As in the Kong Corporation?" My stomach flipped. "It's not what you think. What I think is that you've been holding out on me, Bill." "Now." I told Jihyo an abbreviated version of the story, leaving out the most humiliating details about Marcus, but including Ji-hoon's intervention. By the end, she was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Let me get this straight," she said slowly. Kang Ji-hoon, the Kang Ji-hoon, youngest CEO of a major conglomerate, regularly featured in business magazines, literal billionaire, rescued you from a bad date, drove you home, gave you his personal number, and is now sending you flowers? When you put it like that, it sounds insane. That's because it is insane. Emma, do you know how many women would kill to even meet him? My sister once waited outside Kong Corporation headquarters for 3 hours just to get a glimpse of him during a shareholders' meeting. I looked at the roses, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. Maybe it was just a nice gesture. He probably does things like this all the time, helping people, I mean. Nobody sends 50 roses as a nice gesture. That's a statement. Ji-hyo squeezed my shoulder. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What could I do? Thank him. Ask him out. The very idea seemed absurd. We existed in completely different worlds. Last night had been a beautiful anomaly, a moment of connection that couldn't possibly translate into reality. But 3 days later my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello, Emma. It's Ji-hoon." His voice was warm, slightly uncertain. "I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." My heart hammered. "No, not at all. Thank you for the flowers. They were beautiful. I'm glad you liked them. Listen, I have a confession to make. I've been thinking about our conversation in the car, and I realized I never got to hear about that second worst date, the one with the mother interview." I laughed, tension dissolving. "You want to hear about that?" "I do. But more than that, I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me. A proper dinner, where no one discusses car collections or offers you money to leave." "Are you asking me on a date?" "Yes," he said simply. "Though I understand if you need time after your last experience. I promise I'm nothing like Marcus Shin." "I know you're not," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "And yes, I'd like to have dinner with you. Tomorrow night. 7 o'clock. Perfect." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Kang Ji-hoon had asked me out. This wasn't just a kind gesture anymore. This was real. The next evening, I spent an hour agonizing over what to wear. The dress I'd worn to meet Marcus felt tainted now, so I chose a simple navy dress that Sarah had given me for my last birthday, pairing it with my nicest heels. Ji-hoon picked me up personally, driving a modest sedan instead of the Mercedes with the chauffeur. "I thought this might be more comfortable," he explained. "More normal. You don't have to pretend to be someone you're not for me," I said as we drove. "I'm not pretending. This is also who I am. Just a man taking a woman he likes to dinner. The CEO part, the company, the expectations. Those are all real, but they're not the whole story." He took me to a small Italian restaurant in Itaewon, family-owned and intimate. "It's not fancy," he said, "but the food is incredible, and the owner doesn't care who I am. I come here when I want to feel human." Over pasta and wine we talked. Really talked. He asked about my work, and actually listened as I explained content strategy and digital marketing. I asked about running a conglomerate, and he spoke candidly about the pressures, the loneliness, the weight of thousands of employees depending on his decisions. "My father built Kong Corporation from nothing," he said. "When he died 3 years ago, I inherited not just a company but a legacy. Sometimes I feel like I'm living his dream instead of my own." "What would your dream be?" I asked softly. "Honestly, I'd love to start something smaller, more innovative. Maybe a tech startup focused on sustainable solutions. But I can't abandon what my father built. The company employs 30,000 people. Their livelihoods depend on me making the right choices." "That's incredibly noble," I said. "But also incredibly lonely." He met my eyes. "It has been. Until recently." My breath caught. "Ji-hoon, I'm not trying to pressure you," he said quickly. "I just want you to know that meeting you felt like finding something real in a world full of transactions and expectations. Does that make sense?" It makes perfect sense. I reached across the table, touching his hand. I feel the same way. The evening ended too quickly. As he drove me home, we talked about everything and nothing. Our favorite books, childhood memories, dreams we'd had to defer. When we reached my apartment, I didn't want the night to end. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "I'd like that very much." He walked me to my door, and this time when we said goodbye, he leaned in and kissed my cheek gently. "Good night, Emma. Thank you for tonight." I floated into my apartment, feeling like I was living in a dream. Over the next 3 weeks, Ji-hoon and I fell into a pattern. Dinners at small restaurants, walks along the Han River, coffee dates squeezed between his meetings. He was thoughtful, attentive, and made me laugh in ways I hadn't experienced before. But there was always an undercurrent of something unspoken, the reality that our worlds were fundamentally different. That reality crashed down on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang with an unknown number. Mississippi Emma Park. The voice was female, crisp, and authoritative. "Yes. This is Secretary Yoon from Kong Corporation. Mrs. Kong would like to invite you to lunch tomorrow at the Shilla Hotel. 1 o'clock. She hopes you'll accept." My blood ran cold. Mrs. Kong. Ji-hoon's mother. "Yes. She's aware of your relationship with her son and would like to meet you. Should I confirm your attendance?" What could I say? No. "Yes, I'll be there." After hanging up, I immediately called Ji-hoon. "Your mother wants to meet me," I said without preamble. He was silent for a moment. "I was afraid of this. Emma, I'm so sorry. She has people who keep tabs on me. I should have warned you that she'd find out eventually." "What does this mean?" "It means she's going to try to intimidate you, assess whether you're suitable, and probably attempt to pay you off to disappear." His voice was tight with frustration. "I won't let that happen. Maybe I should just meet her," I said quietly. "Face whatever this is head on." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. If we're going to keep seeing each other, I need to know what I'm walking into. I'm not running away, Ji-hoon. Not from you." The next day, I dressed in my best professional outfit and took the subway to the Shilla Hotel. The luxury lobby made me feel small, but I held my head high as I was directed to a private dining room. Mrs. Kong was exactly what I expected. Elegant, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that assessed me from head to toe in seconds. "Mississippi Park. Please sit." The lunch was excruciating. She asked pointed questions about my family background, my education, my career prospects. Each answer I gave seemed to confirm her worst suspicions. Finally, she set down her chopsticks. "You seem like a nice girl, Mississippi Park. But let's be honest with each other. You're not suitable for my son." "Because I'm not wealthy?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Because you exist in different worlds. Ji-hoon needs a partner who understands the responsibilities that come with his position. Someone from a comparable background who can help him navigate society events, maintain proper relationships, and eventually produce heirs who will carry on the Kong legacy." She pulled out a check, sliding it across the table. "I'm prepared to offer you 10 million won to end this relationship quietly." I stared at the check, remembering the money Marcus had thrown at me. History repeating itself in an even more painful way. "Mrs. Kong," I said slowly, "I understand your concerns." "Do. But your son is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met, and not because of his money or his position. He's kind, thoughtful, and genuine in a world that seems designed to crush those qualities. If you think I'd walk away from that for any amount of money, then you don't understand me at all." I stood, leaving the check on the table. "Thank you for lunch." As I turned to leave, she called out, "He'll resent you eventually. The sacrifices he'll have to make, the judgment from society. It will poison whatever you think you have." Paused at the door. "Maybe. But that's his choice to make, not yours. And certainly not mine to make for him." Sighed, my hands were shaking. I just effectively declared war on one of the most powerful women in South Korea. But I felt strangely empowered. I'd stood up for myself, for Ji-hoon, for what we might become. My phone buzzed. A text from Ji-hoon. How did it go? I typed back. I'll tell you everything tonight. But I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. His response came immediately. I never doubted you for a second. Come to my apartment tonight. I'll cook dinner. Ji-hoon's apartment was in one of Seoul's most exclusive neighborhoods, a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But despite its luxury, it felt warm, lived in, with books scattered on coffee tables and photos of family trips on the walls. You actually cook? I asked, watching him move confidently around his gourmet kitchen. My father insisted I learn. He said a man who can't feed himself is helpless. He smiled over his shoulder. Though I have to admit, most nights I survive on takeout and whatever my housekeeper leaves in the fridge. Over homemade bulgogi and rice. I told him everything about my lunch with his mother. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. I'm going to talk to her, he said finally. This is unacceptable. She's your mother. She's trying to protect you. She's trying to control me. There's a difference. He reached across the table, taking my hand. Emma, I need you to know something. I've spent my entire life doing what was expected of me. I went to Seoul National University because it was expected. I took over the company because it was expected. I've dated women my mother approved of because it was expected. His grip tightened. But with you, for the first time in my life, I'm doing something because I want to. 'Cause you make me happy. Because when I'm with you, I feel like myself, not the CEO of Kong Corporation. Tears pricked my eyes. Your mother said you'd resent me eventually. That the sacrifices would be too much. The only thing I'd resent is letting you go because other people told me to. He stood, moving around the table to kneel beside my chair. I know this is complicated. I know there will be challenges. But I'm willing to face them if you are. I am, I whispered. God help me, I am. He kissed me then, really kissed me, and it felt like falling and flying at the same time. Over the next few months, we navigated the impossible. Ji-hoon stood up to his mother, making it clear that our relationship was not negotiable. She didn't accept me, but she stopped actively trying to separate us. The media eventually caught wind of our relationship, and for a few painful weeks, I was subjected to scrutiny and judgment from thousands of strangers online. The CEO's inappropriate girlfriend, one headline read. Who is the nobody dating Kong Ji-hoon? Read another. Hurt. Every comment questioning my worth, my motives, my place in Ji-hoon's life cut deep. But he was there through it all, holding me when I cried, defending me publicly, making it clear I wasn't going anywhere. At work, things were complicated too. Some clients worried about working with the girlfriend of a competitor's CEO. Others were suddenly very interested in our small startup, clearly hoping for access to Ji-hoon through me. I had to work twice as hard to prove my worth, to show that my relationship didn't define my professional value. 6 months after that terrible blind date with Marcus, Ji-hoon took me back to Lumiere. Why here? I asked as we entered the restaurant. Because this is where I first saw you, he said. Where I first knew that something extraordinary was about to happen. We were seated at a different table, but I could see the spot where Marcus had humiliated me, where my life had seemed to be at its lowest point. I've been thinking about that night a lot lately, Ji-hoon said as we looked at the menus. About how one terrible moment led to something wonderful. Are you getting philosophical on me? Maybe. He smiled, but there was nervousness in his eyes. Emma, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've challenged me, supported me, and loved me in spite of all the complications that come with who I am. You've made me want to be better, to do more than just maintain my father's legacy. He reached into his jacket pocket, and my breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. I know this is fast. I know there are 1,000 practical reasons why we should wait. But I also know that I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "Emma Park, will you marry me?" The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Around us, other diners had stopped eating, watching our table with open curiosity. I thought about Marcus's cruel words, about Mrs. Kang's check, about all the people who had told me I didn't belong in Ji-hoon's world. And then I thought about every beautiful moment we'd shared, every laugh, every conversation, every time he'd chosen me over the easier path. "Yes," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, absolutely yes." The restaurant erupted in applause as Ji-hoon slipped the ring onto my finger. He kissed me, and in that moment, I knew that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are just preludes to the best ones. "Mrs. Kang, there's a reporter from Forbes here to see you." I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing the latest marketing campaign for Kang Corporation's new sustainability initiative. "Send them in, please." Marriage to Ji-hoon had been everything I'd hoped for and nothing I'd expected. We'd faced judgment, criticism, and countless challenges. His mother had eventually softened, especially after we'd given her a grandson last year. The media had found new targets for their attention, and I'd discovered that being married to a CEO meant becoming a partner in ways I'd never imagined. Ji-hoon had made me co-director of Kang Corporation's new innovation division, where I'd helped launch 3 successful startups focused on sustainable technology. I'd proven myself not as the CEO's wife, but as a capable executive in my own right. "Emma," Ji-hoon called from his adjoining office. "Do you have time to review the new tech campus plans?" "Always," I called back, smiling at the familiar interruption. The Forbes reporter entered, a young woman with a digital recorder. "Mrs. Kang, thank you for meeting with me. I'm doing a piece on power couples in Korean business, and you and your husband are the most fascinating story of the decade." "Fascinating," I laughed. "I think you mean controversial. Maybe at first. But now, you've revolutionized how people think about corporate partnerships. You've proven that love and business success aren't mutually exclusive." She leaned forward. "Can I ask, do you ever think about that night at Lumiere? The blind date that changed everything?" "Every day," I said honestly. Not because of what Marcus said or did, but because of what came after. Because Ji-hoon saw me at my lowest moment and chose to help. Because sometimes the worst nights of our lives are just the beginning of our greatest adventures. "That's beautiful," the reporter said. "One last question. What would you say to women who feel like they don't belong in certain spaces, whether that's a boardroom, a social circle, or a relationship?" I thought about the girl who'd run from that restaurant in tears, who'd been told her time could be bought, who'd been judged as insufficient by every possible standard. I'd say that belonging isn't about fitting into someone else's idea of who you should be. It's about finding people and places that value you for who you are. And sometimes you have to walk away from the people who make you feel small so you can find the ones who help you stand tall. After the interview, Ji-hoon came into my office, leaning against my desk with that same gentle smile that had captured my heart 2 years ago. "How did it go?" "Good." She asked about that night at Lumiere. "The night I knew I'd marry you." He grinned at my surprised expression. "What? You think I waited 6 months to figure it out? Emma, I knew within an hour of meeting you that you were going to change my life." "That's impossible." "Is it?" You stood there in tears, humiliated and hurt, and all I could think was that anyone who could walk away with that much dignity deserved someone who would fight for them. He pulled me to my feet, wrapping his arms around my waist. "I'm just glad I got to be that someone." I kissed him, grateful for every impossible moment that had led us here. "I love you." "I love you too. Now come look at these tech campus plans. I want your input before we present to the board." As we walked together into his office, I glanced back at the Forbes reporter's business card on my desk. She'd written a note on the back. "Thank you for proving that fairy tales can happen in boardrooms too." Smiled. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was better. It was real, messy, complicated, and absolutely perfect. And it all started the night I left a date that told me I wasn't worth his time, only to find a man who showed me I was worth everything.